Many people, when they're doing qualitative studies, need to have, triangulation and multiple sources of data.
Okay.
So sometimes they interview, sometimes they do focus groups, and this is particularly helpful. I work with a lot of doctorate in nursing practice candidates, and so they are usually they're doing some sort of a process improvement within the hospital, and they want to do a post-mortem afterwards as to what worked and what didn't work.
Okay.
So let me start with this. So what I created here is I stole from about 3 or 4 different sources, and I just put it all together. I don't have an original thought in my head. The first part, start, stop, continue. I learned as a scout leader when my son was in Boy Scouts.
Yep.
How they do Boy Scouts, among other things, is when you go on a camp out, the young men are learning about their cooking merit badge. So what happens is these 5th and 6th grade boys are cooking for the troop.
Oh dear.
Yes, with the older boys acting as mentors and helping them scramble the eggs and get the things and all that.
Nice. Okay.
So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday morning, they're eating food prepared by 5th grade boys. So the tradition is on the way home from the trip, we stop and get juicy burgers and fries, which is the real food of teenage boys.
Yes. Yes.
So to do something that's also a leadership training, we have the senior patrol leader, while the guys are munching on their fries, do what's called start, stop, continue. Say, the start is, okay, guys, we had this great trip. What should we start doing in future trips to make our camping trips even better? So he's learning to facilitate a discussion,
Right.
and they've got somebody who's a scribe writing down all the ideas. So, gather, elicit. So tell me about this, Steve, what'd you think? All the facilitation questions that's helpful for leadership. The second question he asks is, now that we have this trip, what should we stop doing? Things that were lame, things that weren't helpful, the mistakes that we did, what isn't worth our time on a camping trip?
Right.
So things that are effective or wrong methods. Then the third question is, what should we continue doing? Which highlights best practices, lessons learned, what the guys really liked.
Yeah.
So it's a nice way of organizing what the military refers to as after action reports. They go out to shoot the bad guys and they get together and talk about what should they start, stop, and continue doing.
Yeah. We do this in project management. It's called, the post-mortem review. After the project's done, let's do a review and figure out what worked well, what didn't, and what do we need to change and continue.
So that's step 1.
Yep. Okay.
However,
there's more.
And yet there's more. Often what happens is the facilitator stops there and has this big list. And so what we do is a second thing is we have the admin type up the 3 lists, give it back to the stakeholders, and have them rate all the items on a 5-point scale. 1 is a bad idea, 2 is probably will not work, 3 is 50-50 chance of success, 4 is potentially good idea with modifications, 5 is a likely an excellent idea. Because in brainstorming they go, oh, let's bring kangaroos on our camping trip.
Yeah,
well,
right.
That's probably not a good idea.
We should just have pizza delivered instead of cooking.
Right. So with that, we now get them to take it to the next level where they do ratings of what are so that's step 2. Or the next step. Then you tally, sort by frequency, and list all the items rated 4 or 5.
Makes sense.
So the next thing in there is you then take this new and improved list, and you can take this as far and as deep as you want. Because if it's a big process improvement in the hospital, you may want to spend weeks or months on it.
Right.
You know, what are the best, worst parts of the idea? What are the barriers to implementation? What are the risks and how could we reduce those risks? Who are the champions that need to be recruited to increase the likelihood of success? What would be the first few small steps to implement this idea? And then you could use the SCAMPER questions. So let me bring up another document here.
Okay.
Folks, I'm really sorry about the coughing today.
No, you're fine.
So this is from the fine folks at smartstorming.com.
Mm-hmm.
I scholastically liberated this from the internet. SCAMPER is a very famous acronym that is used in innovation and project development.
Yep.
And the 7 things in the acronym: S means substitute something, C is combine it with something else, 3 is adapt, M is modify, magnify, or minimize, P is put to other uses, E is eliminate or simplify something, and then R is rearrange or reverse. So what this is while you're facilitating the group, you could pull out some substitute questions, some combined questions, adapt, modify, put to other uses, eliminate, and rearrange.
That's awesome. So when you're talking about, you've gone through your start, stop, continue. You've made your 3 individual lists. You've ranked those 3 individual lists.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at everything that was ranked 4 or 5. Like, let's dig into
Yes.
these and think about these.
Yes.
As you're going through those, then you can start using these kinds of questions to figure out if we're going to stop doing it. Maybe let's talk about, you know, what could be taken away, removed, or streamlined. Do we need to stop it completely, or is it just parts and pieces that aren't necessary? Okay.
Right. And there is, in qualitative, there is no end to the amount of analysis that can be done.
Right.
As I like to say, people are still doing dissertations on Shakespeare, and he hasn't written anything for a while.
That's true. That is true.
That's true. All right. So that's the next step.
Okay.
So once you've gone through and spent whatever time you have on brainstorming and idea generation and refining and all that, you take the best 15 or so rated ideas and put them on a matrix.
Mm-hmm.
On one aspect of the matrix is it hard to do? Is it medium, or is it easy to do?
Okay, makes sense.
You know, and this could be related to amount of blood, sweat, and tears, how much money, how much capital improvement, how many resources.
Yeah.
Then you also rate the idea on low, medium, and high levels of value to the organization.
Mm.
So what you're ideally wanting to do is then choose the ones that are in those top quadrants.
Makes sense.
So to recap, we took the common brainstorming thing.
Mm-hmm.
We then fed it back to the stakeholders for them to do the next level of analysis. Then from there, I gave examples of facilitation questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then brought in the idea of SCAMPER, of more ways to do this. And then from the winners that have come out from the top 15 or so, put them on a matrix, which rates them based on easy, medium, and hard to do, and low, medium, and high value for the organization. So your final report ends up with the A's and the B's.
Right. With
And
all the
then
detailed
there's your
information.
recommendations.
And you could do something like this with focus groups for process improvement. You could do it for like improving HR practices, improving like school policies or approaches.
Well,
There's all kinds
anything in
of
an
different ways you
organization,
can use this.
right? Anything in an organization has systems.
Right. This is great. This is a really good approach to, even for those of us that are post-grad working with organizations, this is a great way to kind of think about and organize thoughts and
Well,
build buy-in too, because you've got people talking through and understanding why the A's and B's are the ones that we want to continue with, because we've gone through this whole process to kind of break it down and define what we want and how we want to do it.
yeah, some people do the start, stop, and continue, but they don't take the following steps, which improves the yield.
Yeah.
I mean, depends on your dissertation chair. A couple of these could potentially be your whole dissertation.
I can see that.
So all I did here was I combined something I learned in the Boy Scouts with the Delphi method, with innovation, creativity, and military action reports. I stole from about 4 sources and beat it into shape and painted to match.
Yep.
So that's what this is.
Makes complete sense. This is great. Thank you.
All right.